And hello. Thank you for joining me today. We have Formula X once again this week. However, we have gone to a different track and we have a new wildcard. This week is realistic performance in the cars. We've previously had wildcards such as a randomized grid, but today the cars are not the same. Just as in real life, different manufacturers, different teams have varying levels of success when it comes to developing their cars. And this week we have put the championship contenders, those at the top, in the teams that are not doing so well. For example, Josh Owen, previously seen in the McLaren, has been put alongside his championship rival, Nemi, in the Sauber. So it will hamper their abilities this week. We'll have to see how much they can deal with that, and whereabouts they can still pull these cars. Can they still get near to the front? Or will some of the back runners who've been put in the more updated cars, the McLaren, the Red Bull, will they be the ones taking the victory today? As drivers choose their tyre allocation, depending on how well they think their cars will be able to manage tyre wear, which will vary with these realistic performances. So just to have a look through what teams drivers are on today, of course, the teams they earn points for today will be their original teams. They are simply in these cars for the sake of balance. So we have Pesh in the McLaren, Jim previously in the Alpine in the Red Bull, Onions Please in the V-Carb, Kingspin and McPeedy both in Mercedes previously, now in Aston Martin. It's Lee in Ferrari, Bosoms in the Williams, Hurdler previously struggling in the Red Bull, just to give him a little bit of an advantage there. Anthrax Robin in the Haas. Inosuke, who I will be referring to as Suki throughout the rest of this race, in the Mercedes. JC in the Alpine. Nemi, as I said, in the Sauber. JDM in the other Mercedes. Josh Owen in the other Sauber. F1 Mad in a Haas. Dan Richards in a V-Carb. And Tolu in the Ferrari. These are completely different cars to drive. Different setups needed. Different driving styles needed, with some just being far more challenging than others. And that will make a difference in qualifying here, especially over one lap. As we see many drivers come out on the intermediates, trying to get that intermediate pole position for a free point. But we do have people coming out onto the softs. Kingspin, for example, Pesh, Big Bosoms, Crazy Hurdler, Robin, all coming out on the softs, not wanting to gamble with their final runs, with much more mystery in it as to whether or not they'll be able to pull off a good lap on the soft when they're not used to these cars. McPeedy's gone out on intermediates, but Kingspin, his teammate, has gone out on the softs. Splitting strategies between the two Aston Martins. As we try and work out who it is that's going to start their lap first here. And it is Crazy Hurdler in this Red Bull that starts his lap first. We'll ride on board with him. Through turns 1 and 2, flat out in 7th gear, down to 3rd, harsh braking zone here, just a clip of the inside curb into turn 3. Turn 4, again just very tight on the inside, carrying as much speed as possible onto the back straight. Burning lots of battery here, all the way down to 53% for Crazy Hurdler, the Red Bull with lots of top speed. Purple Sector 1 provisionally, the only ones who have done it so far. Very tight through Luffield. And a very important exit here, very easy to lose it on throttle, but very smooth application there. The Purple Sector 1 does get taken for now. All the way up to 8th gear, into Cops, down back to 7th. And then back up to 8th as the speed reaches 300 kilometers an hour. Through Maggots, then Beckett's. Then through turn 13, turn 14, Chapel, very easy to bottom out on the inside curb. Purple Sector 2, again the first one to do it. Is this Red Bull going to be enough of an advantage for Crazy Hurdler to bring himself to a better qualifying position this week? And through Vale, then Club. Again, very easy to lose it on throttle. But he's managed a 26.5 in that Red Bull. Now, where is everyone else going? Pesh in the McLaren is 5/10 back. That's P2. That's a 27 flat. As Anthrax Robin in the Haas doesn't quite beat Crazy Hurdler. That's P2 for him with a 26.7. Now we'll have a look at some of the Inters runners. It's Lee on the Inters, does a 33.4. McPeedy goes a bit wide there. Had to lift through cops. Not very great just because of the lack of grip on these intermediates. So far, Crazy Hurdlers set the fastest lap time of the session. Bosoms in the Williams does a 27.1, Kingspin 27.7. But Red Bull really is difficult to beat. F1 Mad beats the intermediate time by a second to do a 32.468. Dan Richards in the V-Carb does a 27.4. And McPeedy finishes his intermediate lap to do a 32.8, just a few tenths off that intermediate pole for now. Not many people are going for it, as it seems. Onions Please does a 26.9, but again, Crazy Hurdler not beatable so far. Nemi in that Sauber to still 2 tenths off that Red Bull. What can be done? This is what will really challenge the frontrunners, who may not be the frontrunners for much longer in these cars. Let's have a look at Josh Owen in the Sauber. His championship rise, he spins through cops. Oh, that was not it for Josh Owen. On the softs as well, this Sauber just really cannot deal with high load. But apparently Norkin, the driver, very unfortunate. He'll have been hoping for much better than that. And he bottoms out again in Chapel, just all over the place is that Sauber. As Tolu does another 26.9 to go P4. Josh Owen, of course, comes into the pits having absolutely foiled that run. JC in the McLaren 27 flat. 27.092 to go just behind the McLaren of Pesh. JC in the Alpine. People come back into the pits. So the bottom four here, Jim, Suki, JDM and Josh Owen seeming to have messed up their initial laps. We now have 11 minutes left, so there are still opportunities for them. But this isn't as easy as it probably seemed going into it, as we have Crazy Hurdler, usually in an Aston Martin, I believe. Usually struggles at a bit nearer to the back of the pack, but is currently on provisional pole position by just under 2 tenths. So that's certainly an interesting one, as It's Lee comes out of the pits early alongside the bottom four that didn't quite make their initial laps. Here we are, It's Lee going back out on the softs, having done a 133 on the intermediates. Is the Ferrari good enough to beat the Red Bull? Maybe. Tolu's got a bit closer. He's only 4 tenths off. And as we watch the outlap, the real question is, who can even get close? Jim, however, is also in a Red Bull, and he started his lap, got a bit of a lock-up into Village, but still has that same car beneath him. Goes for a late apex turn 4, carrying as much speed as possible into Aintree. Is a few tenths off in Sector 1. So let's have a look at Suki. In the Mercedes, is 3 tenths off going into Sector 3, which isn't actually too bad. Looks to be provisional P4 or so if he keeps this pace. Good clip of the inside curb on Stowe, but there was lots of room there on the exit. Vale, bit of a lock-up, but good turn-in. Good trail braking. Bit delayed on throttle there. Into the final set of corners. And so that's 27.1. Just a bit of hesitation in Vale. So let's have another look at a competitive car, the McLaren of Pesh, currently in P6. But it's definitely up there for pure pace. What can he make of it? Once again, everything matters in this exit. Long straight you have to carry so much speed into. And he's a bit faster than Crazy Hurdler as it stands, a bit laggy here. The internet just not wanting to show us the lap. But he's currently on a green sector 1, getting a nice tow down the old pit straight here. And into Cops, maybe just a bit of dirty air. He has to make sure he doesn't get impeded here. There we go. As the car ahead kindly gets out the way. Pesh using up as much curb as possible in the fast S's here of Maggots and Beckett's, but is almost 2/10 behind Crazy Hurdler. Not where he wants to be. So we'll come back to him when we see how he does. But Anthrax Robin in the Haas, cutting lots of corners there and invalidates through Maggots and Beckett's. Very unfortunate. But that is him finished. So let's have a look at Nemi. He's been chucked in the Sauber. Not a pleasant car to drive. But the real test of a driver is what you can make of it. Flicks it into turn 4. As much speed as possible, very careful on throttle. But uses as much grip as possible there. Lots of speed. Let's see how the sector time compares to that of the Red Bull. And he's a 10th down. I repeat, a Sauber is a 10th faster than the Red Bull in sector 1. It's a miracle, but it's somehow happening as McPeedy in the Aston Martin pulls off an astonishing 26.6. Is only 700ths behind P1 there of the Red Bull. Very good for the Aston Martin. But the real kicker here is Dan 16, Nemi, in a neon green Sauber. The JDM retires. Very unfortunate, but it's still, Nemi is still a 10th faster, a purple sector 2, doing miraculous things with this car. But I reckon even the engineers didn't know it could do. And through Vale, can he hold on to that advantage? Very easy to lose it here, as we saw in real life. And across the finish line, that is provisional pole for Dan 16 by 2/10. Over a front-running car, and that is in a Sauber. We tried to disadvantage him and it didn't work. Is there anyone else knocking on his door? Onions, please. On an in-lap. So let's have a look at his championship contender, Josh Owen, also coming into the pits having invalidated. Very unfortunate. But let's have a look. Because Crazy Hurdler, despite his efforts, has not been able to improve. So what is going on at the front of the field? Can Dan Richards do anything in the V-Carb? Apparently not. What about F1 Mad in the Haas coming into the pits? Everybody waiting to just do that final lap. It will really decide where they start. An absolutely insane lap there, though, from Nemi. Never seen anything like it in that realistic Sauber. But it's Skyboy Jim that has a look at his final lap earlier than the rest, wanting just that clean air on the front of his Red Bull. But the other Red Bull's P2. Let's see where he can put this one. Through turns 1 and 2, flat out, using as much inside curb as possible just to minimize race distance. Bit of a slide there in turn 3, but good rotation turn 4. Very wide on the exit. Had to lift there, as you can see in the telemetry. And there we are. I think that's a lap abandoned. That is indeed a lap abandoned. Just not doing as well as he quite hoped. Lots of people just getting ready as Dan Richards retires. No idea what happened with him. Very unfortunate. The track getting busier and busier now as people head out for their outlaps for the final session shootout. Oh, as It's Lee takes the liberty of cutting the track in Sector 1. A very interesting choice there that the stewards may or may not want to look at. Oh, Onions Please doing something very, very similar. Interesting choices here. From across the grid. But I believe Pesh may be on a lap here. In the only car that can really rival that Red Bull, it's the McLaren. And he's a 10th faster than Dan 16. So we'll pay attention here to the currently championship dominating McLaren. In real life, that is, and since these are realistic performance cars, there's a real advantage to being coloured in papaya. Lots of curb usage into cops. As much minimum speed as possible. And into Maggots and Beckett's. Again, lots of curb, trying not to lose as much speed as possible. Very wide in Chapel. May just cost him. And it has. He's 2.5 tenths slower than he'd wanted to be. It looked good. But it's just a bit of a mess up there. However, McPeedy in the Aston Martin did something great before. Can he do something great again as Onions Please retires? The V-Carb not liking what he sees as McPeedy's a few tenths slower than his previous lap. What about Tolu in the Ferrari? Into Sector 1. Very gentle on throttle. Into rotation. Can the Ferrari even come close to the low 26s as McPeedy retires, having messed up his final lap? But Tolu's only less than a tenth behind. It's a personal best Sector 1 for him. Very tight on a V angle for Luffield. Very different line to what the rest of the drivers have chosen there. Tolu has about 5 tenths to gain if he wants to get anywhere near to the front. We'll have a look at this sector cutoff before. And he's lost the time he wanted. We'll have to have another look at Dan 16 now. Current provisional pole. But can he go even faster in the highlighter coloured Sauber? He is! He's 500ths faster than his current Sector 1. Very tight to the curb in Luffield. Different to what we saw from Tolu. As Tolu's final position P6, Bosam's P8. And the whole field is on a lap. Oh, and it's Dan 16 spinning in cobs, just as we saw from Josh Owen earlier in the session. Speaking of Josh Owen, he's already passed that part of the track. But it might not be looking great for him. It's a personal best Sector 2, but a very slow Sector 1. Very wide in Stowe. Didn't quite clip the inside curb. Missing the apex there. This car just doesn't quite want to rotate for them, it seems. into Vale, lots of inside curb, unsettled the car there. And it's very slow, Josh Owen sending it into the barrier, knowing there was no hope for it there. This car just seemingly too difficult to drive. As Crazy Hurdler in the Red Bull does beat that Sauber. Dan 16 having completely ruined the lap in Cops with a massive spin. The Sauber just doesn't have enough downforce to keep it flat out there. So Dan 16 lost it and Crazy Hurdler took advantage. Usually nowhere to be seen at the front of the grid, but here he is. The surprise pole sitter for today. Around the historic British track born out of the airfields of World War II, where we've seen many historical drives, is this one of them? Well, he certainly set himself in good setting, in good footing for the race. Well done, Crazy Hurdler. New pole sitter for Formula X. Very well done. So our starting order is Crazy Hurdler in the Red Bull, Dan 16 in the Sauber, McPeedy made very good work of that Aston Martin, Anthrax Robin did very similarly with the Haas, Pesh putting it in P5 with the McLaren, the rookie having joined last week, Suki having gone P6 in the Mercedes, Tolu in P7 with the Ferrari, Onions Please P8 with the Racing Bulls, Bosoms in P9 with the Williams, Dan Richards usually further to the front, but that V-carb was just too difficult for him, JC 11th in the Alpine, Kingspin bit further behind his teammate in 12th in the Aston Martin, Josh Owen in the Sauber, much further back than Nemi, F1 Mad in the Haas in P14, and the rest of the grid, well, struggled a bit too much with these realistic performance cars. It seems this was an entirely different challenge to what they'd expected, but a challenge nonetheless. Now it's up to them. The strategy will have to vary. The fuel consumption, for example, does vary between cars, based on the power units they've been given. Of course, some teams being customer units to other cars will be quite similar, but there's still variation here to worry about. The Silverstone circuit does do a good job of differentiating good from great drivers, and I think that's what we've seen today. Crazy Hurdler taking advantage of the pace in the car to pip Nemi to the pole position, despite his best efforts. Nemi, as usual, complaining about, saying he would have got pole if, but it's Crazy Hurdler to tell him, no, you get pole if you get pole, and that's what he's done today. The drivers, of course, being given a very big break between qualifying and the race, as the strategy here is going to be very different, with some already complaining that the tyre wear may put them on a two-stop, as we wait for the formation lap to begin. Crazy Hurdler leading us for the formation lap in that Red Bull. Let's have a look at these tyres. Crazy Hurdler started on the hards. It doesn't look very promising to me, but the four behind him have gone to mediums. Then Suki's gone to hards. 3 more mediums behind him. Dan Richards on softs, saying, well, if I'm going to have to do a two-stop because of the car, then I'll do a two-stop. And JC, Kingspin, Josh Owen behind him, all in mediums. Josh Owen, usually our pole sitter in the McLaren, has been put all the way down to P13 because of that car. But his championship rival Nemi's put it in P2, so there's not much else to say. Then there's 3 soft runners in P14, 15, 16, and JDM rounding out the field in that Mercedes in the medium tyres. So a big strategic mix here. We've seen this quite regularly. But what will really matter is the effect of tyre wear when it comes to different cars. Different cars deal with dirty air worse. Different cars can keep their tyres in a good temperature operating window for longer. And it will make a difference over the course of this entire race. As we see the Red Bull coming to park in the front position. Parks it quite well there, tyres just on the white line. And as the rest of the field does the same, Crazy Hurdler has a job to do. Has his work cut out for him to defend against these Saubers and the Aston Martin of McPeedy, doing quite well in qualifying with better tyres. And as the grid lines up, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red lights for the British Grand Prix in realistic cars, and the lights go out, and here we are. Crazy Hurdler gets off the line quite well, is now side by side. Dan 16 actually does much better on the mediums and has the position before turn 1. A little bit of a nudge there from Crazy Hurdler, but they are how they are. McPeedy keeps P3, Crazy Hurdler P2. Big Bosoms loses several positions. There's absolute carnage going on in the middle of the field. And that's the Williams of Dan Richards spinning in the middle of the field. Absolute chaos. But it's Dan 16 in the Sauber that's already taken that front position. Absolute insanity there. Just on the start. Well done from the Sauber. And Josh Owen started P13, now P11 in the other Sauber. I've no clue what on earth went on at the back of the pack. But what I do know is that we now have JC in the Alpine 2 seconds behind. So whatever did happen will most likely need to be handed off to the stewards. Kingspin there, losing some positions in Maggots and Beckett's, just compromising his line. And has to be worried about losing DRS to the front of the pack. Through Stowe, the dirty air hitting that Aston Martin like a truck. As we have a yellow flag. What on earth has happened at the back of the field? As Tolu is now seconds behind. Have we had a... Oh, goodness, Tolu. He tried his best, but he's already 6 seconds behind the pack in lap 2. So it is what it is there. Kingspin has a front row seat to this battle between Josh Owen and JDM. Josh Owen sending it in the middle of turn 4. They're now side by side. With DRS and the Sauber burning as much battery as he's got. Does he have the straight line speed to make it on a Mercedes? Brakes as late as possible in turn 6, turn 7. Loffield cuts back to the inside, having made JDM go deep. Can he hold on to it? Down the old pit straight. He has that position. And he finally makes that move work. A Sauber on a Mercedes. Incredible work there from Josh Owen. But the Mercedes doesn't want to give it up. And at the front of the field, Nemi hasn't been able to run away with it just yet, as Pesh has a look to the inside of Suki. Into Stowe, the McLaren on the Mercedes. The McLaren being the customer engine of Mercedes. And into Vale, Pesh has it. That McLaren just completely outclassing the Papaya car. As Crazy Hurdler takes fastest lap. Nope, Anthrax Robin does. After him. The front of the pack is still identical. Crazy Hurdler very close to the back of that Sauber. The Red Bull not letting him get away with it. Tolu has got a fastest lap, albeit from the back of the field. And here we are, Crazy Hurdler with DRS and lots of battery to burn in a much superior car. Goes around the outside of turn 6, tries to cut to the inside. Dirty Air doesn't quite let it happen. As the Sauber goes wide in Luffield, trying to get the car straight as soon as possible. And Crazy Hurdler content to sit behind. But it's JDM in the Mercedes, looking to have a go at Josh Owen, only 2/10 behind. Josh Owen actually has a look to the inside of the Haas of F1 Mad. Does F1 Mad have damage, I wonder? He doesn't, he's just going extremely slow. What on earth? So the Sauber, starting in P13, is now up to P8. But he may just be under attack from this Red Bull on the inside. He gives room. But now it's a Mercedes on the outside of Vale. Has a look. JDM goes deep into the second part of Vale. Josh Owen doesn't quite have the acceleration to keep up with him. A little bit of a nudge there from the front wing to the rear wheel. And Josh Owen has to give that position back. Overtaking not as easy as he'd hoped in this green car. In fact, not just more difficult than he'd hoped, absolutely atrocious. And once again, in the Sector 1 straight, Crazy Hurdler sits with DRS behind Nemi. Oh, as F1 Mad goes for P10. Cuts to the inside of JDM. The Haas doesn't quite have it though. But he might have better straight line speed. Hang on. Pulls to the inside of Cops. Both in 8th gear. Shifts down to 7th to give the space. The Mercedes goes off track. May or may not be an investigation about that one. Very difficult. Oh, F1 Mad goes very wide in Beckett's. Oh my goodness. Turn 13 and 14. Lost him the position to Kingspin, bringing the other Aston Martin into the points. But hang on. What is it I'm seeing? Crazy Hurdler and Dan 16 side by side into Vale. Crazy Hurdler on the outside of the chicane. Very hesitant on throttle. Almost had that there, but just got outbroken by Dan 16. As Kingspin gets the first 3-second penalty for track limits of this race. 21 laps to go. He might be able to make up for some of those positions by seeing other people get them too, but it's not ideal for sure. We have a yellow flag. There's JC, I believe. Has indeed gone into the barrier. JC has caused a safety car, completely lost his front wing. I don't know what he was hoping to do there. It's Sector 1 as well. How has that happened? We have a safety car lap 5 by the Alpine of JC. With no front wing to be found. The Alpine completely ruined. Someone called Jack Doohan. They've put him in the game. But it's still Nemi that leads the pack through this safety car period. And those who started on the hard, such as Crazy Hurdler, are going to have a difficult time with this decision. Do you pit? Or do you stay out, hoping that you can hold on to those positions? As Crazy Hurdler does come into the pits, off the hards. I wonder what the plan is. But someone who didn't come into the pits was Suki on the Mercedes. Started on the hards, but instead of pitting, like Crazy Hurdler did, decided to stay out. And has gone into first place. And so the position we find ourselves in as literally everyone except for this Mercedes at the front comes in to get new tyres. Some double stacking. So we've had a bit of a shake-up here. Most have kept their positions, a bit of a switch around at the back. But we do indeed have a new leader of this race, and his name is Suki. And there is the safety car. Not quite coming in this lap, as we have some people at the back of the field to wait for. But this has essentially forced everyone into a two-stop strategy. Because there's no way hards will go 20 laps, nor will the mediums. Which does actually level the playing field with some of the worst cars that we're going to have to two-stop anyway. So the tyre delta between Suki and the field is 5 laps. Now the wear that he's got in those 5 laps is the important part. If he's been looking after them really well, they'll only be between 5 and 10% worn, and he might just get away with it. With the advantage of having warm tyres as opposed to the cold tyres of the rest of the grid. But otherwise, he might just find himself in a very difficult position. You can see the Sauber of Nemi trying to do anything he can to warm up his tyres. That's left, right. Anything to scrub that surface just to get the temperature up. As under safety car, those hard, white-walled tyres can get very difficult to manage. And I'd expected his safety car in this lap. Here we are. As we go on board with Suki, leading us through this restart. See when it is that he decides to go. The field extremely bunched up behind him. The green flag is gone. And here we are, we've gone Into Vale chicane. We're already at racing speed. No overtaking till the timing line. But Tsuki has gone. And he's got a Sauber on his tail. Nemi wants that position. And he's not going to stop till he gets it. Let's see what's going on with the rest of the pack. As we have a dive bomb of Anthrax Robin. Goes on McPeedy. And the Sauber of Dan 16 goes on to Tsuki. Has a dive bomb in turn 4. Makes that move with the tyre delta. Tsuki struggling here. But with 2 wide. As Onions Please and Anthrax Robin go side by side into turn 6. Onions Please takes that position. Goes on the inside of McPeedy. Into Luffield. Gets a much better exit. Bit of wheel banging there. And the position's gone to Onions. Lots of jostling for positions up at the front here now. As Onions goes wide, McPeedy takes that position back. Says yes please. And through Maggots and Beckett's takes advantage. The Aston Martin back ahead of that V-carb. Jim getting a 3-second penalty. The other Red Bull struggling much more than his teammate. Is currently in P2. Of course, no DRS down the Kemmel Straight. Not Kemmel Straight, back straight here. Kemmel Straight's in Austria. Not Austria, Spa. McPeedy has a look on the inside of Tsuki. Into Vale. Lots of wheel banging. In fact, the wheel's probably locked there on the exit of Club. There's now a big gap between McPeedy and the front of the field. Tsuki holding up these cars here. The V-carb of Onions. What on earth? I've watched him go off track there in turn 1 and re-enter. Safely or not is up to the stewards. As McPeedy should now have a go with 5-lap newer hard tyres to take back P3. The Mercedes ahead is charging and into turn 6. Goes on the inside, makes that move work. Oh wait, Tsuki comes back on the inside of Luffield, makes some wheel banging there, contact. Bit unnecessary if you ask me to fight that position when he knows he's got a tyre disadvantage. But now, there's a gap between McPeedy and the rest of the field. Just a bit unnecessary from Tsuki, to be honest. But he fights when he wants to fight, and that's where we are. But Josh Owen is somehow in P4. As Josh Owen just muscles past Tsuki into Maggots and Beckett's. Started P13, might I remind you. The other Sauber has made his way back up to nearly a podium position. But oh, the Red Bull of Crazy Hurdler doesn't want to let Dan 16 get away with anything. On those mediums, bit of a switchback there from Nemi. Dive bombs the inside of Vale. Crazy Hurdler, a bit of a slide there. No traction on the exit. Shouldn't have done that in second gear. Firmly in third for that one. Just overdid the revs. But the fighting isn't just at the front, the fighting's everywhere. And Kingspin and the other Aston Martin really struggling with the dirty air. Into sector 1. Onions Please has a look at Tsuki. Turn 4. Goes around the outside. Is given the space. And makes his way past Tsuki, now really struggling. Having realised he made a mistake in staying out on those tyres. Crazy Hurdler and Nemi side by side in turn 7. Crazy Hurdler makes that position back. Nemi goes too deep. The Red Bull firmly ahead. And McPeedy, the Aston Martin, in a podium position and looks to be able to fight. In Maggots and Beckett's here, dirty air can be really extreme. But there is a DRS zone that immediately follows Chapel here after turn 4. Turn 14, sorry. And here we are. It's Dan 16 with DRS, burning his battery, has a look to the inside of Stowe, but it gets firmly covered off by Crazy Hurdler, causing Dan 16 to have to brake a bit more. Very good defending there from the Red Bull. No dive bomb is viable, so into Vale. Crazy Hurdler holds that position. Hoping he took it in third this time. And McPeedy is just waiting to capitalise on any mistake that Dan 16 might make. Into turn 1, Crazy Hurdler goes a bit narrow on the entry. Nemi has a look to the inside of turn 4. McPeedy struggling here with traction, especially under braking in turn 3. Crazy Hurdler tries to deny the slipstream, as the two in front just lose time. Josh Owen makes it down the inside of McPeedy, now on the outside of Luffield. Does the Sauber have better traction than the Aston Martin? It's close. They're still side by side into cups. Is anyone going to back out? And Josh Owen gives that position back through cups. It was him that eventually gave up. But that fight is far from over, as it's Lee falls back at the back of the field there. An incident there with yellow flags. No idea what he did. But Josh Owen with DRS has to look to the inside of Stowe, and that time it's much harder to defend. PD does go off track there, not a warning though, didn't get an advantage as he goes down the inside of Vale, breaks early so as to not make the dive bomb work. What, there wasn't room, the room was going to close, and he knew it. And that puts Josh Owen in a podium position. The two championship rivals now next to each other on the leaderboard, on the timesheet, as Jim retires from the session. Not quite a safety car yet. Just a yellow flag, Sector 3. It doesn't seem like we're getting a safety car, so we carry on. There are battles everywhere at this point. Big queue between P3 and P8. There goes P3, P4. You can see 5, 6, and 7 behind him. As It's Lee actually came into the pits for new mediums that lap as onions please. P7, but after that 3-second penalty, he doesn't seem to be in the points anymore. Oh, an F1 mad has had a moment there. What's happened with him? JDM goes wide ahead of him. I believe in DRS he just got absolutely destroyed. The Haas can't hold up to the Mercedes and that Ferrari. With the dirty air being so high, on this track especially, the overtakes are all over the place. People get desperate, and having clean air is the real solution. But we have to have a look at Dan 16 and Nemi. Dan 16 on the inside of Luffield, taking so much curb. Crazy Hurdler had a slide on the exit, and Dan 16 takes advantage. They are losing time, however, to P3, Josh Owen. If they're not careful, he will get DRS on them. And it looks like he's already done it. Crazy Hurdler's really struggling on these 7-lap-old mediums now. Having started on the hards, he has no real other choice than to stay out, and we've seen how well that's gone for Suki. Hint, it hasn't. So going to the mediums was his only viable choice, but here he is. 7 laps in, really struggling. JC gets a 3-second. He's in P15, so not really in points contention quite yet. But here we are, Josh Owen, now mixing it with the top 2. He's up there, alright. And if Hurdler's not careful, we'll end up once again with a Josh Owen v Nemi battle for first position. As F1 Mad comes into the pits after 8 laps on the medium tyres, says I'm done. Decides to go, I presume, for another set of hards for the rest of the race. Yes, he has. A little bit of locking up under braking there from Josh Owen, but it's what you'd expect from the Sauber. Have a look again at Suki. Really struggling now. 13 laps on those hard tyres. They have to be dead soon. But that won't stop him having a look to the inside of Copse, and yet he then backs out. But he did still have a look. Goes wide there. No warning. And Tolu takes advantage of the fact he's gone wide and says, yes please, points for me. Goes into P9. No longer struggling on tyres. With DRS and battery to spare. And on the inside of Bussum's into Stowe. That's 2 overtakes in one sector. Oh, never mind. Bussum's goes wide. Brakes very late in that Williams. And goes into the pits. So Tolu does still make that move. And so does Onions Please in the V-carb. Josh Owen now only 3/10 behind. With a fresh train of 6 cars at the front of the field. This could go either which way. And it's about to get messy with DRS. The Red Bull decides not to go for a move, so people follow suit. Turn 6, turn 7, Luffield, Brooklands. The cars may sound the same, but they're definitely acting different right now. As it's McPeedy and the Aston Martin, now 9/10 behind P3. Struggling to hold on to that DRS when faced with dirty air. And not much battery left to his name. He is at risk of Anthrax Robin behind him having a look. Very close when it came to Stowe there. It didn't quite have a look. As McPeedy peels into the pits after 9 laps on hard tyres. Very interesting choice there. Has he gone for medium hard, or is he going for mediums for 10 laps? This might just be the undercut of the century. He's gone for medium tyres. Very early. He's recognised that so much fighting's going on at the front of the grid, he'd rather have just clean air. Clean air, new tyres, get some good laps in, and see where he comes out when they all pit. But in the meantime, the fighting doesn't stop. In fact, the more they fight, the better this will be for McPeedy. Will maximise that undercut. Josh Owen at a glance to the inside of Copse. Goes wide. Gets a warning. Gets his first track limits warning of the session. We'll turn the gap to leader to see how close Kingspin gets in his outlap. And will the leaders react? Oh, it's Crazy Hurdler and Josh Owen who've both come into the pits, as has Pesh. Followed McPeedy on the undercut, but Dan 16 stayed out. So now it's all up in the air. Kingspin gets a 10-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. Oh, goodness. Very easy to do here. The pit lane's very, very long. And you want to stay full throttle for as long as possible. Josh Owen almost overtook Crazy Hurdler in the pits, didn't quite make it happen. So where does McPeedy come out in all this? There he goes. McPeedy's come out ahead of Crazy Hurdler. By 2.5 seconds, an absolutely legendary undercut from him. If he can nurse these tyres to the end of the race, he might just have a better position in store for him. He now gains rapidly on the front 4 who still haven't pitted. And they used to be front runners. might just have another contender. With these new medium tyres treating Petey very well. So while his teammate got a 10-second for speeding in the pits, he's on a roll. As Nemi does come into the pits now, realizing how badly he's been undercut. It might be a problem. So does Anthrax Robin. What about Tolu? Tolu does not. He stays out on those hards. As does JDM. Taking them longer than they really should be. There's now only 8 laps to go. Those would be fine on the mediums. As McPeedy sets the fastest lap of the session at 29.230 on those medium tyres. It's really him they have to worry about now is Crazy Hurdler. Oh goodness. Was a front-running contender after qualifying. But not anymore as Josh Owen and Nemi have at it. And it's Nemi that goes off the track after some contact. Sent down to P7. The stewards are going to have something to say about that as he re-enters in the middle of this fight between the Haas and the V-Carb. Dan 16 may also have just had a very unsafe re-entry there. Has a look to the inside of turn 6 on the Haas of Anthrax Robin. Stays around the outside of Luffield. Some wheel touching between the two. And ultimately Nemi's forced to stay P9. That's not where he came out and that's not where he wants to be. A very unfortunate incident between the two Saubers there. We didn't get the whole thing. But it won't be great. Josh Owen, now P5. As McPeedy speeds away in the Aston Martin. Is only 10 seconds away from Tolu and JDM, who have to pit at some point. But they've both gone now 13 laps on those hard tyres. This Crazy Hurdler takes that fastest lap away from Petey by going 0.3 faster. But now there's fighting. Josh Owen and Pesh. The rookie who joined last week in a far superior car. As JC in P15 had a penalty in the first place, gets a 10-second for speeding in the pits and retires. Had enough of today's race. Lost his head a bit there. But there's still so much more to see. Crazy Hurdler is catching up to McPeedy here. The Red Bull not giving the Aston Martin any chance of staying away. Especially through these high-speed corners. It is not close. There's so much more downforce on that thing. He's gained a second through Maggots and Beckett's. Absolute insanity. And DRS only makes it worse. As Pesh does overtake Josh Owen. And the McLaren gets ahead. Both Saubers not doing as well as they'd wanted. Doing much worse than they'd actually had a chance of doing. Dan 16 having started P2 is now P9, and Josh Owen having made it from P13 to P3, now down in P6. Crazy Hurdler beats his own fastest lap. Is F1 mad? Down in P12, gets a 3-second. And McPeedy's now got a Red Bull on his tail. Let's see, with DRS, who's going to make the move? McPeedy covers the outside. Oh, and that's a look to the inside from Crazy Hurdler. McPeedy stays on the inside of Luffield. As Crazy Hurdler carries speed round the outside. And with a better exit, they still stay side by side. Down the old pit straight, you can see the old markings of where the cars used to be. McPeedy gives that position back. Or gives it to him to try and follow behind. As Jim leaves the session, having been watching after DNFing. The fight for first is now firmly on. In 6 laps, can these new medium runners beat the old hards of Tolu and JDM? As Josh Owen fights back for that P5. Into Vale, solidifies that move. But JDM has actually pitted off those hard tyres onto softs. Red wall tyres, usually used in qualifying. And pitting here costs a lot of positions. So he's gone down to P10. Putting Crazy Hurdler in P2, McPeedy P3. Oh, and McPeedy's been dropped out of DRS even. Not good for the Aston Martin. These cars are absolutely everywhere at this point. It's Tolu. There's 5 more laps to go, but those tyres look significantly grained already. Can he keep them going, or is he at risk of a puncture here? Having to be very tight on, very smooth on steering. Is he coming into the pits? Yes, he is! That will cost him the win he'd wanted. Oh, as he messes up the pit entry and gets sent back on track by the game. He reverses to try go into the pits, but this might just disqualify him for going the wrong way. No, he's made it. But at what cost? He'll now most likely come out near the back. Very unfortunate, couldn't quite get that pit entry correct. Very important to practice those. The Ferrari pit crew having waited 3 millennia for this car to come in. He looks like he'll be coming out. Ugh. Firmly in 14th place. Both Ferraris in P14 and 15. Not a good day for the Tifosi. Oh. And Onions, please. And Dan 16 going side by side in Luffield. Dan 16 not having much space on the exit, but doesn't dip a wheel into the gravel. Onions takes that position and holds onto it for Cop's corner. But McPeedy, still in P2, having qualified P3. Currently a very consistent race performance. And Crazy Hurdler does have that 3-second penalty. So if McPeedy can hold on to even a bit of this pace for just 3 more laps. Crazy Hurdler now on 5 warnings, 1 more in McPeedy's position of McPeedy might just take that win from him. It's now all about the pressure. Will the pressure get to Crazy Hurdler? Or can he keep it cool? And keep it on track to take home his maiden win for Formula X. That gap now 2.7 seconds to McPeedy, 2.8. It looks very under control from Crazy Hurdler, though. It'll be a challenge if we want him to get another penalty. But JDM and Kingspin go side by side in Cops, and it's JDM that takes advantage. Coming out on top with those brand new soft tyres. Only 2 laps old against 6 laps old mediums. But hang on. It's Pesh and Josh Owen going at it. Pesh now in a podium position, Josh Owen P4 having to defend from Anthrax Robin, who wanted to have a look into Vale. And Pesh in the McLaren, having joined last week, set an impressive P6 or 7, is now looking at a podium. has just managed to get out of a second of Josh Owen, but he does still have DRS, doesn't he? No, he doesn't. Josh Owen, no DRS. And Tolu gets that fastest lap, having gone on to soft tyres. But of course, fastest lap means nothing when you're in P14. Crazy Hurdler has absolutely run away from McPeedy. But all it would take is him to go off track once more. And then need another 2 seconds in that delta. But it seems this car is just extremely well equipped for it. That gap now 4.4 seconds. So let's have a look at Nemi. After an unfortunate incident put him down to P9, he's made it to P7. Might want to have a look again at the V-carb of Onions, please. And into Vale, he takes the outside. Brakes as late as he can, stays alongside, has another look into the second part of the chicane. But on the exit, had to go to second, didn't quite get the traction he wanted. And Josh Owen, in Sector 1, is now fighting with Anthrax Robin for that position. P4. The Sauber just really struggling on its tyres towards the end of this race. And Pesh now having a look at McPeedy. It seems the McLaren and the Red Bull are just doing much better in the later stages of these stints. And there's lots of battery in Pesh's car. And lots of people just very closely following each other. Josh Owen here has to stay behind in Mackett's and Beckett's. Look at that steering wheel. Completely understeering due to dirty air. But now, McPeedy and Pesh. McPeedy burning all the energy he has. Pesh with DRS still doesn't quite close in into Stowe. And through Vale, he'll hold on to it for now. And it's going to be the final lap as they come across the line. Here we are, just one more lap to go for Petey to hold on to P2. And Crazy Hurdler to solidify his first victory alongside his first pole position. It won't be a Grand Slam due to not having fastest lap and having not led every lap. But it's pretty darn close as Kingspin in P10 gets another 3-second penalty. But here's a DRS zone. This is the absolute nightmare for McPeedy. The McLaren with DRS on his diffuser. 4/10 between them. The move isn't made quite yet. Through Luffield. There'll be much better traction on the Papaya car. But it's all about the driver. Who can get the best exit? Dan Richards with a penalty. Down in P11. And McPeedy holds on to the position through Cops. Now Maggots and Beckett's isn't really possible to overtake through due to dirty air and the fast corners, so it'll be out of Chapel here, out of turn 14. There's another DRS zone. What can Pesh do? He's burning battery. McPeedy covers the inside of Stowe and Pesh has a go at the outside, and that move is made before he even reaches the corner. Is McPeedy going to have a look into Vale? No. There's no space for it. It can't quite happen, but Anthrax Robin has to look down the inside in the final corners. Vale and Club. Anthrax Robin side by side with McPeedy. Goes off the track, and it's McPeedy that gets that podium position as Crazy Hurdler comes round to finish. And that is a win for the Red Bull of Crazy Hurdler. Absolutely dominant in that Red Bull. An insane performance today. As Kingspin loses their points position due to penalties, but had it on track. And that's 26 laps of Silverstone. Madness with these DRS zones and these realistic cars. Drivers were all over the place. It definitely made for a fun one. So we have an entirely new podium, really. We've not seen anything like it. As P1 goes to Crazy Hurdler, P2 to Pesh, and P3 to McPeedy. If you'd asked me how this realistic performance race would go, I'd say, I reckon one of Nemi or Josh Owen would have beaten it with the Sauber, but it just wasn't to be today. Josh Owen made a massive comeback from the back of the field, so for that, definitely driver of the day. Didn't get as high as he'd wanted to due to a strategy mishap. Just pitted one lap too late. McPeedy outdid them on that. But Crazy Hurdler brought home the win, having started on pole position, and Pesh, having started P5, took it to P2 in the McLaren. An insane race performance here from someone who's only raced once before in this series. So here is our race results. Of course, the teams are not the same as they really are. But wow. Drivers made a very, very good job of the cars they were given today. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next week.